Hello, my name is Wesley Gavarik. I am with the University of Wisconsin Eau Claire Intro to Public History course number 386. Today is December 7th of 2020, and it is currently 5:30 p.m. I am here today with Anonymous, and would you like to say hello?
Hello.
All right, and so we'll get right on to the questions. So Anonymous, how has COVID impacted your community?
Well, things have changed considerably. Just like even just our small neighborhood, we used to have, kids out playing. We were all doing things, and now it's, we're just not out and about as much. We are in our yards, but the kids, in the actual neighborhood aren't playing with each other as much as they were. It's very interesting going out shopping, doing, anything like that, because it's not as busy anymore, which I'm not saying I don't appreciate. It's kind of nice to go grocery shopping when there's half the people there, but it's just not, there's not as many happenings. It used to be a very active, busy area with music, like outdoor music in the parks and activities happening, and it's just not. So we found a lot of things to do just in, at home. We fortunately like to go camping, so we spent a lot of time in the woods this last summer, which is good. But yeah, there's just not as much activity. I guess it's not as busy.
Okay. And so speaking of just communities, have you noticed like any huge changes when it comes to like stores, like grocery stores, department stores, libraries, restaurants? Have you noticed a
Uh,
big impact?
we honestly haven't been to a restaurant, so I guess I can't speak to that. We've ordered in a couple times, but grocery stores is really mostly it. We've done a lot of, like order ahead and pick up, like curbside pickup, which is a huge change. Very convenient, I will say. It's really nice. I don't have those impulse, buys because I don't go in the store most of the time. Um, Grocery stores, like I said, there's not usually as many people. Um, Before, I think back in March, the store that I typically go to, requested that everyone wear mask. I would say about maybe half the people would wear them, and now it's mandatory. I think just because of the surge locally in the community, they're trying to help and do what they can. So, yeah, I noticed a lot of the smaller businesses in town, they've gotten creative with how they, can still operate and, still make money and still keep afloat, which is really neat. So, yeah.
Okay, cool. So then going off the community, how has COVID impacted your work?
Well, I work at one of the hospitals in town. So it's really kind of uprooted everything that we do. We've had to make changes and modifications, not just in the protective equipment that we wear on a daily basis, which I work part-time. So I'm not there for every step of the change, but it feels like every time I go into work, something has changed or we have to wear a new layer or new something when I'm there. Um, I usually facilitate programming with our patients. So we are based like in group settings, and we talk about coping skills and therapy and treatment and whatnot. And we've had to limit the size of groups. So we've had to completely change the entire schedule for the patients, and then trying to keep it feel as normal as possible. Um, so that's been really interesting, very unique. I know that we are currently, the hospitals have all been full in town. We're at capacity because they've had to turn different departments into COVID units right now. Um, so like electoral procedures and just like the outpatient services are very diminished. Uh, I know that. So we've actually gotten staff that have come to help us from other departments that don't have a job at this point. So they're learning all new things, but just to keep them working and keep them afloat too. So it's been interesting, I will say, and we're doing our best to try and just keep going with all the changes that keep happening. And so far, we're doing pretty good, I think. Just keeping our patients going and keeping ourselves going.
Okay, well, nice.
Mhm.
And just working off of that, it has put like a strain on your job, right? And just
Mhm.
like, have you experienced anyone calling sick or, like just
Yeah.
putting a lot more work on you?
Yeah. There was a point, it was I think a few weeks ago, we had several people out because the protocols and the procedures are, even if you're exposed, you have to be home for X amount of days. Or if someone around you has symptoms, like there's certain days, so we don't bring it back into the facility. So I actually was working in a position that I've never done before. It was on our unit, but there was no one to do any of our PCA work and help out on the floor with patient cares and requests and our checks and things. So I showed up to do a job I'd never done before. So um, it was interesting. I got a lot of steps in that day, but and we've actually, I would say, several occasions been short nurses, nursing staff. We've done our best, as best as we can, but the past week, knock on wood, we've been fully staffed. So hopefully it stays that way.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So then we'll move on then. And how has COVID impacted your family?
We've spent a lot of time together. It's a good thing we like each other, right?
Yeah.
Um, well, I mean, first and foremost, my husband's been working remotely since March. And so we're fortunate enough to have, he has like an office space. He's always had one. So it wasn't too difficult of a transition for him, which was nice. But they're not at this point going back into the office at any foreseeable future. And then the kids, we opted to do, I mean, they stopped in class school in March last year. So we were doing homeschooling or home virtual learning last year. And we opted to do the option this year. It's called hybrid model. And so they are home 3 days in the week and then in school 2 days. So they could kind of limit the amount, the class sizes. So we're attempting to be teachers 3 days of the week, which is very interesting. um, they're have adjusted pretty well, but it's a big change for them to, I'm now their teacher for 5 hours on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and so that's a really hard transition. However, it does make them very, very excited to go to school on Thursday and Friday, so that's a plus. Let's see here. I said we like to go camping and be active and do things. So we were fortunate in that sense that where we like to go and what we like to do in the summer, especially, doesn't involve a lot of people. And state parks and county parks and things, you can kind of do your thing and you're good to go. Other than that, we haven't really been doing much. We have gone up north a couple of times to visit my parents. Beginning of the summer, we actually spent like 6 weeks. We parked the camper up there. My husband worked from the camper, and so they got us for a really long time. So I mean, that was actually kind of nice. It was enjoyable to just be able to spend that kind of time with them. But other than that, yeah, we're home. We've working on projects and then just kind of trying to keep our sanity because we're with each other every day,
Oh
more
yeah.
than normal. Yeah.
Uh, and so just going off of school, so like I understand that you are also like a teacher, but for like the teachers in the school, are they transitioning well to online, or are they having a struggling, or are they struggling a little bit as well?
I can say from my end, they're doing an amazing job. From my personal views, I can't imagine all of the things. They got a week before school started to kind of get ready for it, so the fact that they had a week to kind of get going and get into it, and we have, I mean, the organization of that, bless their hearts, seriously. And then there's class meetings that they have arranged every day, and the teachers that are going back and forth between two cohorts. When we're home, there's another group there, so they're teaching there and still making sure there's meetings for us. And our school has been fantastic at keeping us updated, and we have all the resources that we need. I feel they've been doing great. I'm really impressed with the Eau Claire School District. Actually, we haven't had to shut down. after Thanksgiving break, we did a week of virtual school just to make sure people had, if they started being symptomatic, whatnot, they wouldn't obviously come back in with it. Hopefully there would be enough time if they went traveling, they would know. And just so they could get, the teachers, there was a concern of teacher shortages. However, we haven't had to shut down officially, and there's been a lot of smaller schools that didn't take as many precautions that have had to, shut down for 2 weeks before they could get back going. So overall, I can't imagine, the stress that they're under and the pressure and how much work they're putting into it, because this is a complete change, but they're doing a fantastic job.
Awesome. I'm glad to hear.
Yeah.
And so
we were a little nervous, I will tell you that. We didn't
Oh.
know what was going to happen, but
well,
so
definitely,
far,
I definitely understand that you'd be nervous with, with all that's going on.
yeah.
And just in your experience, have you ever been through a quarantine before?
No, this is the first time.
No?
This is just it's kind of surreal, right? So you learn about, the Spanish flu, in school, and you're like, well, that would really stink. I can't even imagine that. And here we are in 2020 doing the same things, and having to be, extra careful and not do what we normally do, which, in the long run too, it's nice. We slowed down a little bit, which is good. It's not a constant, we're always running on the go. Yeah, this is very different.
Okay. And so then we'll just transition on here. So in your experience with all that's going on with school, work, your livelihoods and all that, how do you think the government did, in terms of states, local, federal? Do you think they at least were doing pretty good for a virus that's been around, for just experiencing a pandemic right now?
I think they've tried, at least statewide. Locally, I think they're trying to do what they can to help, because they can see that, at least from my point of view, people are maybe interpreting their requests for masking, for example, as a power play, and they're just trying to get people on board, because it is, studies and research and science all say that it can be effective, even if it's only a small percentage, which it's not. I mean, it's a decent percentage. Just wear the mask when you go out, but people see it more as I'm going to tell you what to do, and these are my liberties, and I don't want to, cross that. So I'm not, I think they're doing what they can, but they don't have everyone's cooperation. So I think that makes it difficult. I do think federally, had we had a little bit more guidance or leadership, or maybe on boardness with some of this stuff, from the get-go, versus it not being called a hoax, we might have a different outlook on it. I can't say that. We can't, go back in time. We can't predict the future, what would be different, but I feel like there wouldn't be as much pushback from people, the citizens, if we maybe had a little bit more of a positive influence on that end.
Okay. And so then, just with your experience then with how you feel about the governments and all that, do you think they should stay involved, or do you think that it should be more of a responsibility by the people? Or
that's a good question. I mean, really all they can do, is, have these mandates. I mean, there's not locally, our police force, they're not going to, every single time someone doesn't want to wear a mask, they're not going to arrest you or fine you or ticket you, because it's just not physically possible, so there's, I mean, if we had a way to actually have follow up and maybe consequences, but I can't even imagine that undertaking. How would you even do that? So at this point, I don't know if they could really help. I think it's probably more on us, and more the business owners that don't want to enforce it because they might lose business. I will say, for example, Menards, even from the get-go, required masks, and people were mad about it and yelling, there were all these stories and articles about how people were so angry about it, but we're now how many months into this, and it's just, oh, we have to go to Menards, make sure you grab your mask. It's just yep, that's what we do. So I think if everybody, not that it's just the business owner's responsibilities by any mean, but everybody was just on board that, yep, we need you to wear one when you come in. We would maybe be over this hump by now with the people fighting or saying, I don't want to wear one. And then more on a personal level, like the accountability of ourselves, it is just a piece of cloth. And you don't have to wear it the whole time. I mean, we wear them 8 to 12 hours at work, and I'm still here breathing, and, you know, I'm upright, I'm here, you know. I think people don't maybe educate themselves with both sides, and so that maybe complicates things a bit. So I think there's quite a bit of personal responsibility, absolutely. And then, you know, unless the government really wants to force your hand, I don't know how much more effective they could be. You know, if they're not saying, if you don't follow this mandate, we will fine you, or we will arrest, you know, I don't know how much more you can do.
Okay. And then just so pretty much just it should be like a 50-50, like the government's doing their part, people do their part, and together just come together and stop, right?
That'd be great. Why can't we just do that, right?
Oh yeah. Okay, well then so then just in your experience with your education and your knowledge and all this good stuff,
Mhm.
what do you think about masks themselves? Do you think they're a good starting point for, you know, this does it curb this pandemic, and would you suggest other health equipment if possible?
I think they're a good piece of the puzzle. I know that there's a lot of skepticism about it. I mean, you know, if you're wearing a cloth mask and you don't clean it regularly, or if you know, you're still touching, or, you know, all of that. And so obviously we have to be responsible when we wear them, but it's also in combination with just trying to maintain your distance, your social distancing, that is huge. Keeping yourself apart from other people as far as you can, you know, especially if you don't know them. And then the hand hygiene too. I think people forget that. Like, yes, there may be, you know, germs or whatnot on the things I'm touching, but when I get back in my car, I just hand sanitize quick, and yep, then I can take everything on and I'm good. So I think that's part of it. I know at work we're wearing eye protective wear, like goggles and shields at this point. And if we have a patient that is being tested for COVID, they're in isolation, and we have to put on the gown, gloves, shield, everything, just in case, because of the type of virus that it is, the droplet precautions. And so you have to be completely covered. I don't necessarily think that that is, you know, something that everyone should be wandering around in, because, you know, that's a little much. But I think if you're out and, you know, like, shopping's a great idea, and there's not good ventilation, or shopping's a great example. I mean, and you're in a store with 100 people, just being respectful of each other's bubble and each other's space, and having a mask on at least keeps the particles in your bubble and not like everywhere on everyone else. So yeah, I think they're a piece of the puzzle. I don't think they're the only thing. I don't think they're the answer, but I do think that they could help, because there are how many people that have tested positive, and there's healthcare workers that work with them, and, you know, they do gown up, they have everything on, and they're protected, and they follow the protocol, and they're still at work working with the patients every day, because they've not contracted it, because they are, you know, following these guidelines. So
Okay.
mhm.
And then so just following along with masks, I've heard reports of people saying, you know, like they're starting to become more of a marketing thing where, you know, like you can see them and some of them are cute. Like you'll see like a Santa beard on some, or, you know, like a quirky little phrase.
Mhm.
And I'm just gonna ask, like, do you think that takes away from the potency of the mask? Like, do you think there's some being cheaply made, or actually a better question would be, what kind of mask do you think would be like, sorry, let me rephrase this. What kind of mask do you think would work for this virus? Like, I heard there's some that aren't going to be effective enough. They don't filter the air good enough. In your expertise, what mask would work or at least do a good job?
Well, at work, we are required to wear surgical masks because of the filtration, and if like they get soiled, or if they get damp just from your breathing, you can easily throw them away and put a new one on. And that's one of the biggest things. You know, if it gets wet or moist with your spit, it's now ineffective. So you need to change it out and get a new one. Our kids, we got fun cotton ones, fabric ones, because we wanted to help encourage it. It's a lot easier to get them to wear it if it's something that they picked out and they can choose and do that with. But I do send extra ones with to school. So if they get sweaty or dirty or whatnot, they swap them out right away. I think, again, back to responsibility, being aware of it. Obviously, surgical masks, if they are at better filtration, would be ideal, but then you're also looking at the cost and the waste of that too. Like, how do you keep that in check? Fabric cloth ones can be effective as well if we use them responsibly. And so, like I said, if they're really wet or you sneeze in them or something like that, if you can change them out, if you're not constantly fiddling with them. We don't personally, like, for the ones, we've got some from work that they gave us that are like a cotton spandex almost, that you could put a filter in if you wanted to. But if you are keeping your distance, and you're out in public and you're doing, and if you're sick, you stay home. That's a huge thing too. If you're not feeling well, don't go out. It just helps keep your junk to you. And that's one of the big things. Is so, I mean, in an ideal world, obviously we all could get the masks that we need at an endless supply. But that's obviously that's not feasible, right? So yeah, I guess I don't know. Because at the hospital, if they're telling me that these are the, better filtration and they're better to use the surgical masks, then I would tend, if we could do that all the time, absolutely. But just, I can't imagine the costs that they're incurring, because some of us wear 4 or 5 different ones a day, because we'd have to change them out if anything happens, or if we get too hot. So I don't know. That's a good question.
That's right. That's what I'm here for, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, so before we just wrap things up, just gonna ask you, is there anything else you'd like to say for the people who will watch this interview or listen to this interview?
Well, it's been tough. It's been a huge adjustment for everyone. And I have to say, I think my family is pretty fortunate in the sense that I do work part-time and I'm very flexible. My schedule is extremely flexible, and that my husband's been able to work full-time from home. So we are in probably a very unique situation, that we have that ability to, I can stay home on the days the kids are home and do their schoolwork and make sure they're up to, caught up in doing that. And he's still able to work full-time from home, no hiccups, no, difference there. But we've made big changes too. We used to do a lot more with extended family, go, visiting, and in the summer we'd travel more and go do activities. And so we've learned to slow down, and we've learned to be thankful for the little things, when it's quiet right now. This doesn't happen very often.
Yeah.
So you tend to take a different perspective. So, it's tough, and you figure out ways to kind of manage it, and it is doable. You just have to kind of be flexible with the change. And we try to do, not, like the news can get overwhelming at times. So we try to do like fun family nights and things that we can do just to keep our energy in that direction, versus being weighed down with, oh my gosh, how many cases and how many deaths. And but if this ever happens in the future, I sure hope that we have learned something from this, because we didn't seem to act like we learned anything from the Spanish flu. I feel like we are, not learning from anything, and just let's see what happens, which is kind of unfortunate. But as tough as it's been, and as scary as it's been, there's a lot of anxiety around it. It's really, because this thing affects everybody so differently. You don't know what's, going to happen. I could have it be just fine. My husband could get it and he could be in the hospital, because just, how it works. So, so in the future, if you're watching this, dinner's ready. although it may be tough, I mean, just look at the, try to find the positives and the silver linings if you can. And so as much as it's been difficult to spend so much time together, we've been pretty lucky that my husband's going, yeah. You learn a lot about each other, I'll tell you that much. It's possible. It's absolutely, doable, and find the little things, find that you find joy in, and appreciate them and take time for them. And this too shall pass. When, who knows? But if, there's any little thing you can do to help, I'll get off my soapbox here, but wearing a mask in public, it's just a piece of cloth. It's literally, nobody's trying to, in my opinion, take over your life by telling you to wear a mask. It's, but everyone's entitled to their opinion. I get it, but do the little things to help in the community if you can. But we'll get through it. We'll be here, hopefully have learned something from it, like I said.
Oh, yes. Definitely. Thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome.
And of course, great words to end off this awesome interview.
Well, thank you very much for asking me.
Oh, yes. And so again, this is Wesley Gavarik, and again, I'm with the University of Wisconsin-Eau Claire, Intro to Public History course number 386. And thank you again for this interview, and we'll be signing off.